Hey everybody, my name is Eric Hopkins and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Welcome to episode number 3 of my full episodes here on my podcast. I'm toying around with possibly, giving it a name. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to call it. I've kind of been leaning towards a cup of cinema, just because I release these videos, usually in the mornings. So I thought maybe that could be a good name for it. Maybe I'd have a cup of coffee with it while I'm waking up in the morning and discussing movie news with you guys. So I thought it might be kind of fun. We'll see where that goes. I may or may not use that. It's still in the planning phases. But I would like maybe give these episodes a name for my channel. So let me know what you think about that. It could be kind of cool, but we'll see. I hope everybody had a good weekend. I had a pretty good weekend. Not a whole lot going on. Just kind of relaxing from that video game that I have a hard time beating. I call that work. I mean, the game's pretty laggy, it tends to drag on, it seems like you never can get to the next level sometimes. And of course, the final boss is a killer, I call it taxes, they always win. Yeah, but I'm having a good time. I hope everybody else had a good weekend, and I hope everybody's ready for the week ahead of them. So without further ado, how about we get into a few movie topics for the week that I'd like to discuss. Not a whole lot on this show. I've only got like 4 things I'd like to discuss with you all. But I thought we would just first start out with a big rumor going around, and that rumor being the Fast and the Furious could get a crossover with Jurassic Park. You heard me right. The Fast and the Furious could get a crossover with the Jurassic Park franchise. Apparently, when doing, interviews for the new Fast and Furious movie, the director Justin Lin would not rule out the idea of a crossover with the Jurassic franchise. He said, well, I've never said never to anything. So, and the fact that part of our philosophy is to not ever be boxed in or labeled, that's all I'll say. Then, of course, Michelle Rodriguez, also went on to say, that they wouldn't rule out the idea. You have to brand and merge with each other. But the only thing standing in the way is lawyers and studios, because usually the brands that you're trying to merge belong to different studios or whatever, but it's under the same umbrella, that being Universal Studios. I don't know. I'm just saying it could work. Once you reach a certain pinnacle, there's nowhere to go but to cross brand and merge. It's what big corporations do with each other when they get too big. You know what I mean? So this whole rumor stemmed from these 2 comments from the actress and the director of Fast and Furious 9, and I believe he's going to be directing Fast and Furious 10 and 11 too, to round out a one big trilogy at the end of this franchise and give it a proper conclusion to the main saga story that is. We'll probably still get Hobbs and Shaw spinoffs with The Rock and Jason Statham and things like that, but this entire rumor of a Fast and Furious Jurassic Park crossover started with these comments. And again, the internet takes these comments and run with it. So the rumor of this crossover has been, catching like wildfire, and everybody's like, what? I mean, and to be honest, I know Fast and Furious has never shied away from the ridiculousness and the craziness of their movies. But there is going to be a point where they are going to officially jump the shark, so to speak, cross that line between ridiculousness and just stop it. I mean, I know a lot of people probably feel that way about the Fast and Furious franchise already. I personally love the Fast and Furious franchise for what they're doing, and I can accept that the movies are ridiculous and just a lot of fun, so I enjoy them. And apparently I'm not the only one, because there's a lot of people in this world who go see these movies because they consistently make $1 billion at the box office, and that does not happen if a lot of people don't go see it. So, but even me, this new trailer that came out last week, where at the end of the trailer you see the car on the back of a 747 or whatnot, and it releases and it's going to shoot up into space. They're starting to get to that point with me. I mean, if they go into space, I'm going to start to really lose interest in this. I just can't. There's a lot of things I'll accept for the Fast and Furious franchise. I mean, they've done, tanks, trains, airplanes. They're messing with magnets in this movie coming up. All that stuff I can accept. Even the bringing back of certain characters who you supposedly killed off, because I'm a comic book fan. I mean, obviously in comic books, no one's ever truly dead. This is a, action comic book film is what this is. I mean, Dominic Toretto has, he might as well have superpowers. The dude's been jumping from cars and, flying and landing on asphalt for years now, and he's not died yet. So, I mean, I can accept that. But when we're getting into, space or dinosaurs in Fast and Furious, even I'm going to start going, oh, please don't I honestly don't believe this rumor about the Jurassic Park crossover. I don't believe it in the slightest. So I'm not concerned. I think it was just a comment that was made, by an interviewer was asking about, hey, could you possibly do that with Universal since Universal owns both franchises? I mean, of course, they're not. The director and the actress are never going to say, no, we're not doing that. They're never going to say no. They want a job. They want to be hired to do these movies if given the opportunity. So they're going to, do the PR thing, and they're going to, say the right things at the time. But realistically, I don't think Universal is that crazy. I hope. Because, I understand that you want money-making franchises to sell at the theaters. But Fast and Furious on its own, Jurassic World on its own, perfect. And of course, Jurassic World, has got a new movie coming out in about another year or so. And from what I understand, they may even already have another trilogy in mind. So they don't need, and Fast and Furious has got a few more movies, and then if you keep doing Hobbs and Shaw spinoffs, or if you spin off even some more, you can make, I've heard they're even going to be doing a Netflix animated show, I believe. So there's things, coming down the pike here that, Fast and Furious can do that they don't need to cross over with Jurassic World and vice versa. So I don't believe this. I hope it doesn't happen, but if it does, Lord help us all. All right, let's move on to our next topic of the day, shall we? This comes to us from Variety. Alfred Molina has now come out and discussed a little bit of his role in the new Spider-Man No Way Home film. And he is quoted as saying, "When we were shooting it, we were all under orders not to talk about it because it was supposed to be some great big secret. But, it's all over the internet. I actually described myself as the worst kept secret in Hollywood. Obviously, Marvel Studios wants to keep, the return of Doc Ock, obviously who Alfred Molina played in the early 2000s movie Spider-Man 2, and did a great job, by the way. Marvel Studios wants to keep that secret under wraps, and for good reason. I understand that. But it's already been confirmed that we're going to be getting, Alfred Molina was already confirmed previously, and we're going to be getting, Jamie Foxx's Electro. We're going to probably be getting Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man back in this film as well, along with a bunch of other characters probably returning from the OG Spider-Man films before the MCU got the Homecoming series in the works here. So it sounds like it's going to be a bit of a multiverse, into the Spider-Verse kind of thing, and I think it could be a lot of fun. But this is the first time that, Alfred Molina has actually spoken about the role, and he goes on to say that he was pretty much, summing up, he was kind of hesitant to do it because obviously he felt that 17 years ago he had more of a more physicality to him where he could actually pull off the role. But the director John Watts, he goes on to say, looked at him and just said, "Did you see what we did to Robert Downey Jr. and Sam Jackson? In Captain America: Civil War, and they de-aged Robert Downey Jr. They de-aged Samuel L. Jackson and Captain Marvel." So he's basically said what they're going to be doing with Alfred Molina's Doc Ock is de-aging him. And supposedly the report from Variety also goes on to state that Alfred Molina's Doc Ock's character will pick up immediately after Spider-Man, where it left off, Spider-Man 2. At the last time we saw him, he was sinking to the bottom of the lake or the river, I believe, after Spider-Man had persuaded him to stop his machine from destroying the city. And of course, Doc Ock, ripped it down and, sunk with it. And we all were led to believe that he died at that point. And he very well could have in that universe. But since the multiverse is going to become a thing in the new MCU, moving forward, it stands to reason that you can pull him from this timeline right at this point and it make narrative sense. So it sounds like it's going to pick up right where Spider-Man 2 left off for Doc Ock. What that means for Jamie Foxx's Electro from The Amazing Spider-Man 2 could be something similar. We could possibly get the Green Goblin. We could get Sandman with Thomas Hayden Church. I'd love that. Green Goblin, I would love to see Willem Dafoe back to play him. I'm not sure we're going to get the Lizard from the Amazing Spider-Man, and I highly doubt we're going to get Dane DeHaan's Green Goblin as well, or Hobgoblin, or whatever you want to call it. But you take those previous characters from the Spider-Man films and you team them up with a possible Mysterio from Spider-Man Far From Home. Many people believe he didn't actually die in that film too, and he was creating an illusion to make it look like he died as well. There's always that possibility, or his consciousness could be uploaded, into a computer program or something or whatnot. Because we saw at the end of that film, his buddy that he was working with was downloading material, and we don't know what they're going to do with that at the end of that film. And of course, in Spider-Man Homecoming, you had the Vulture played by Michael Keaton. That could also be where they all team up and form the Sinister Six, and Tom Holland's Spider-Man from the MCU may have to find help, so to speak, to defeat this diabolical force of the Sinister Six. And if that's the case, it makes perfect narrative sense to bring in Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's iterations of those characters. And a lot of people think that Emma Stone could also return in this movie as Gwen Stacy. And I believe at the time of this filming, she was pregnant, but there are ways you can do this to where you can bring in Emma Stone. And if she's willing, you could spin her off into a live-action Spider-Gwen. That is what I would love to see. But if all these puzzle pieces come together, I think Spider-Man No Way Home could be one of the best, probably the best Spider-Man film we have ever seen on film. And I cannot wait for this. That movie is scheduled to come out in December of 2021. So I hope everybody else is excited about this as I am. We'll just have to wait and see where they go with this. But I like where the line of thinking is based on this interview with Alfred Molina, and I have all the faith in the world that the MCU is going to knock this out of the park. So let's move on to episode 5 of The Falcon and Winter Soldier. It dropped on Friday, and I'm not going to spoil anything here. We're going to do a non-spoiler review of this show. Episode 3 and 4, I won't talk about them in spoilers either. I ain't going to ruin anything in this series. But episode 3 and 4 was definitely much more on the action-packed side of things. Episode 5, with the exception of the beginning of the episode that directly bled into episode 5 after the big finale of episode 4, we had to have a little bit of an action sequence to start episode 5. But after that, it's really, really, really slowed down. But in a good way. A lot of character development in this episode, especially on the side of Sam Wilson and John Walker, and where they're going individually moving forward here and setting up the finale in episode 6 next week. So don't miss that. That will be the grand finale of The Falcon and Winter Soldier season 1, at least, until we maybe get more. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, this is definitely setting up the end of the season. And again, it's no secret, this isn't a spoiler, that this show is setting up Sam Wilson taking over the mantle of Captain America. Whether or not he, it looks like, from what all things considered, it looks like that is the direction they're going to go. And I love the way they're doing it, because he had doubts and all this sort of stuff. But, in the end of the one thing I did like about episode 5, they really went into the fact of what it would be like for a black man to take over the mantle of Captain America. And they made heavy references to the fact that, some people will never accept that. And that is a very, deep, almost political aspect of the show. But it also brings a good point. So it's very well done. And, the MCU has always been good about, telling their stories with such great detail, and then also planning ahead. So there are certain things in this episode too where they're setting up things for the future, and especially one character in particular that is in the comics that they kind of set up going forward a little bit, and I'll get into that in my spoiler review on the channel. So definitely stay tuned for that. There's also a post-credit scene for episode 5, so definitely stick around for that. If you did not see that, it sets up the finale as well, and another character from the comics, which I'm looking at an image of him right now on the internet, and it's actually incredible if they go through with this design and the character. I don't know where he goes in the comics, but it is actually really cool to see, and I just like the idea that the MCU is starting over after Avengers Endgame. They had to start from scratch, so to speak. I mean, they lost Robert Downey Jr., they lost Chris Evans, they lost Scarlett Johansson, or at least after her film, we may not see her again. I don't know how they're going to play that, but they have to kind of start all over when it comes to building up their character roster again from scratch, because they don't have Iron Man, no Cap, no Black Widow, and some of the other characters are off or done, or we don't know what they're going to do. I mean, I think Hawkeye is going to be passing the mantle. The Hulk, he may be passing the mantle. And, I don't know about Thor. Thor is getting another movie, so I have a little more hopes that he's going to stick around. And of course, the Guardians are still around and things like that. But the core Avengers, they're kind of done. Now, I do believe that we are going to probably get another Avengers film, but it's going to take a few years for the MCU to build up their roster again, just like they did from the beginning of Phase 1 in 2008. And I believe, and I have faith that they will do that again. And they will have us all invested in these new characters before that time comes, and it's going to pay off just fine. We just have to give them time and be patient and not expect, what we already love to happen again, because there is a certain point in movies, and this kind of goes back to the Fast and Furious thing a little bit, where sometimes you can go too long. I enjoy those films, but there are a lot of people who feel like Fast and Furious should have ended about 3 movies ago. So in the case of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the Avengers, maybe that iteration of the characters of the Avengers team should be over, and maybe we should move on before they last too long. Even Robert Downey Jr. has talked about that in interviews. He's talked about you got to find a nice place to move aside and step aside and move on before you stay too long and overstay your welcome, and audiences get tired of it. So in that case, the MCU may be making the right move here, and building up new characters is the way to continue the Marvel brand, but not get it stale. And the one good thing that they do is all their movies are different types. You've got your comedies, your action, your spy thrillers, your mystic art stuff. You've got different things that, and they can come together, but at the same time, they have their own unique styles. And I think the new Doctor Strange movie is going to delve a little bit more into the horror aspect of things too. So they're doing things, now they're branching into TV, so they're doing different styles of things, and by doing so, they keep the product fresh. And that's one thing that Marvel is doing better than a lot of other franchises right now, and a lot of franchises hopefully will learn from this. DC in particular, I think, could definitely take a lot of lessons from what Marvel's doing, and I think they're trying. And I think, again, DC, I always preach patience with DC too, because I think they've got a lot of good things upcoming, but we'll see what they do too. But episode 5 was a great episode. Definitely more slow on the character side of things and building up things more, in a more quiet pace, more slow pace. But that doesn't always mean bad things. It doesn't always have to be super fast paced to keep our attention. And Marvel knows how to tell a good story, and all these things are going to pay off most likely in this next week's finale. So definitely check that out Friday, April 23rd on Disney+. All right. For my last topic today, I wanted to discuss a little bit, since we're about a little over a week away now, and obviously from looking at my hat, you all can tell that I am a Indianapolis Colts fan. We're about a week away from the 2021 NFL Draft, and so I thought it would be fun to kind of go over a little bit of the draft in general, but mostly I want to discuss the Indianapolis Colts draft prospects. I'm one of them guys who, I'm more of a professional football fan. I don't follow college a whole lot. I usually learn more about the college players when they come out for the NFL Draft. So I'm interested to see who the Colts select and all the teams in general. When I watch the NFL Draft, I always watch what all the teams' needs are in the NFL, because I have a pretty good idea what they need based on what I watch every season in the pro game. So I like to watch if the team addresses the positional needs they need, and then see how well those players pan out in the NFL, because sometimes there are college players who pan out in the NFL, and there are other college players who come into the NFL, they think they're going to be good, and then they don't end up doing anything in the NFL, and they become a big draft bust. So I always just take a wait-and-see approach for every team in the NFL, let alone if it's my team or not. So obviously, number one this year, they're the Jacksonville Jaguars. They appear to be taking Trevor Lawrence, the quarterback, being the Jacksonville Jaguars are in the Colts division, I kind of hate that because, everybody expects Trevor Lawrence to be pretty good, so we'll see what he does. But there's always, again, you just never know. So I kind of hate to see that in the division. But as for the Colts, obviously the Colts have, I think, eight or I don't know, 6 picks, something like that in the NFL draft. I can't remember how many it is at the top of my head. But they had the number 1 or the number 21 overall pick in the first round. And then they have number 54 in the second. They don't have a third round pick because the Colts traded that pick along with a second round pick that could be a possible first in 2022 for our new quarterback in Carson Wentz. Now, my opinions on Carson Wentz, I think he's got some potential. Obviously, he's had a few injury-ridden seasons, but I keep telling myself as a Colts fan that the last time that Carson Wentz had a good season, or an MVP caliber season, I should say. He wasn't too bad in 2020, but it wasn't nearly as good as his MVP season when he was with the Philadelphia Eagles and they won the Super Bowl after he got hurt that year. But his offensive coordinator was Frank Reich, and Frank Reich is now the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. So it makes all the sense in the world that Frank Reich would want to bring in his old quarterback that he was on the way to win a Super Bowl with him until he got hurt, and then Nick Foles took over and they beat New England in that Super Bowl. But Carson Wentz showed great promise that season. And I would argue that Carson Wentz has never had as good of a defense, well, with the exception of maybe the Super Bowl year in Philly, has never had as good of a defense, never has had as good of an offensive line, a run game. Now, the Colts, one of the weaknesses they have is receiver. I mean, they got T.Y. and they got Michael Pittman now, which I think is going to improve this season too. So I don't think it's going to be as bad as people think. There's a lot of people who are, upset that, oh, why'd they go get Wentz? They should have got somebody. But I think, Carson Wentz, as long as he can stay healthy, that's the big key to me. He's got to stay on the field. And in order to do that, I think the Colts have to use their number 1 pick at pick 21 on a left tackle. That is what I would do if I was running the team. Obviously, I'm not Chris Ballard, so I'm not making that decision. But if it was up to me, the number 1 pick for the Colts should be a left tackle because Anthony Costanzo retired this offseason. And as of right now, that offensive line has a glaring hole on Carson Wentz's blind side. It is imperative to me that they protect Carson Wentz in order to keep him from getting injured. We have a good offensive line for the most part outside of maybe but obviously, Quentin Nelson and Ryan Kelly, I think, are the standouts here. But they've got a solid line, and obviously they want to run the ball too. So in order to do that, you also got to have a good blocking offensive line. And I think that'll keep Wentz healthy, be able to run the ball. It'll keep the pressure off of Carson Wentz so he doesn't have to carry the entire team on his shoulders. And that'll also keep him upright as well. Also, in order to upgrade that line, it helps out, the returning Marlon Mack. Hopefully he gets to see the field some this year. We've got Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines and Jordan Wilkins. One of the best backfields, I think, in the NFL. Especially when it comes to Mack and Taylor when they are healthy. And Hines looked really good in 2020. So that's a 3-headed horse there for sure with Wilkins, rounding out the 4. And I'm very excited what that group does, especially if Marlon Mack can get back to his old self and back on the field. A lot of talk going around that maybe he may not be as, the number 1 guy anymore. He may be there more as a mentor figure, which is also a good thing. But it's nice to have a solid set of guys in case one of them, God forbid, gets hurt and we have to ride out without them. The other positions I think the Colts need this season are obviously wide receiver. I like the fact that we were able to retain T.Y. Hilton at a very cheap price. He was obviously wanting to just be back here in Indianapolis. It sounds like this could be his final season. He's made mention that he wants to finish what he started. So this may be his final year. It's a 1-year deal that he got. So it may be, Super Bowl or bust for T.Y. Hilton this year. And if that's the case, I'm glad he made the decision to stay here at home. But I think Michael Pittman was a good pick last year. This year, Paris Campbell is a player that I think could, as long as another guy who needs to stay healthy. He's been in the league 2 years. This will be his 3rd season, I believe. And if he can stay healthy, that'll be great for the team as well. He's even said himself, I think, on Twitter that this is the year. He's got to do it. He's got to prove it. And I agree wholeheartedly. Our tight ends positions are pretty good. We got Trey Burton and Jack Doyle, obviously, and Mo Alley Cox, a highly underrated player for the Indianapolis Colts. So I think that could be a very big, win for us too at that position because Carson Wentz, had a good, time throwing to Trey Burton at the time, when he was with Philly with Frank Reich as well. So they've got a bit of a connection there, which I think will help. So I would take left tackle, the number 1 pick. I think you got to get a receiver at some point, whether it be a second round We ain't got a third round pick, so maybe fourth. But just to kind of fill out the core there. I mean, I would still love to see a big, solid receiver, like a guy like you could go up and get it in the end zone when you need to. But I mean, obviously we got some speedy guys. Michael Pittman's decent size, but I'd like to see just some more consistency on that side as well. But I also think the Colts could use an edge rusher. That is one thing that maybe in the second round you go for, because obviously we got DeForest Buckner, which we traded for last season. He's been great. The Colts, I think, are still working on getting Justin Houston back, but he didn't play like every snap as it was. So I think that if you get those guys back, it'll be good. But we've never had, not in a few years, we've not had since Freeney and Mathis, have we had two guys on the edge who can just come around and attack the quarterback. So that's one thing I would like to see the Colts correct, maybe get back to those ways. If nothing else, but I think our linebackers are solid, with Bobby Okereke and Darius Leonard. Obviously, those guys are beasts. We've got some other players obviously we did lose some players this offseason. Not very many, though. We kept most of them, and I think our secondary is pretty strong with Kenny Moore, Julian Blackman, and they got Xavier Rhodes back as well. So I think the majority of the defense is pretty sound. Obviously, the concern is depth if you get some guys that get banged up or whatnot. But I think the four, here are my four picks the Colts should take. Left tackle, wide receiver, edge rusher, and possibly a player in the secondary, either corner or safety. I think that would be good for depth reasons. But that's what I would personally do if I was the general manager. But I'm not, so we'll see what they do. I obviously think Chris Ballard has made some good moves and has made this team much more competitive than it once was. It's a shame to me that Andrew Luck's no longer around, because I think if he had this team back when he was getting destroyed back there in the pocket, that we could definitely be making a run for the Super Bowl. So I'm highly encouraged for 2021. As long as Carson Wentz plays well, this team I think will have a lot of heart, a lot of grit, and I think they're going to win a lot of games this year. And I cannot wait for the expanded season. And I know it's only one more game, but I can't wait to see what they do. 2021, hopefully we'll get more fans back in the crowd, and we'll have another great season. So I'm excited for where the Colts go. Well, with that, guys, I think that'll do it for episode 3 of my full episodes here on my YouTube channel. Comment down below. Let me know what you thought about this show. Let me know what you thought about all the topics I talked about here today. Also, hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you get all the notifications about when I put up new content on my channel. Also, find me on the 3-Star Podcast. You can look us up on YouTube at 3-Star Podcast. Also, find us on Facebook at 3-Star Pod and on Twitter at 3-Star Podcast 1. We'll probably be going through a bit of a branding change, a little bit of a name change to kind of just branch out and do something a little bit different. But we'll also be continuing to do our weekly shows. Usually release around Friday or Saturday, mostly time Saturday, I think. Then of course we release stuff throughout the weeks of clips from our main podcast show as well, and we do trailer reactions over there. We're also talking about doing some make me laugh videos or some skits, and we always cover pro wrestling, movies, video games, sports, whatever we decide we want to talk about, just anything that comes up into our brains throughout that week and we want to discuss. So I hope you guys will follow me over there. Also, you can follow me right here on this channel. Don't forget to do that, and you can find me on Twitter at EricGel with a J. And until my next video, guys, take care.